Good evening, I'm Vikram Oza, and this for the first time on NDTV Profit. This show is The Big Question. And this evening, the headline that's got everyone talking about, Prime Minister Narendra Modi having said that he'll be speaking to the American President, Donald Trump, he's going to do this soon, and that the two sides will try to wrap up their trade negotiations at the earliest. This is happening after weeks of high drama, especially after Trump slapped 50% tariffs on a slew of Indian exports, citing Russian oil imports. And India, on its part, has stood firm on protecting sectors like agriculture and dairy, marking them as red lines. Now, the US president has had what it may seem as another change of heart. He says there should be no difficulty in closing a deal. And Prime Minister Modi, who has not directly responded to what many would classify as Trump tantrums on those tariffs, that hasn't happened in the recent past, but now Prime Minister Modi is striking a positive note on the back of Trump's conciliatory statement. The Prime Minister is calling India and the US close friends and natural partners with limitless potential. And that brings us to the big question. Beyond these warm words, beyond all that rhetoric, what does this thaw, if it is that, what does it really mean? Can Modi and Trump reset the trade equation that had gone seemingly out of whack? To unpack this, I'm joined tonight by the former Indian ambassador to the WTO, Jayant Dasgupta, is joining us. Along with him, we have David Roche, strategist at Quantum Strategy. And also with us is the former ambassador, Ajay Malhotra. Gentlemen, thank you for making the time. But before I come to this discussion, let's just listen in to what we got from the finance minister first. Nirmala Sitharaman was in conversation with us at the NDTV Profit GST conclave in Delhi. That took place only yesterday, and we quizzed her over there about the possibility of a trade deal with the US amidst all the tariff tensions. This is what she told us.
From our side, we are keeping all the doors open, if I can use that expression. The diplomatic teams are engaging with the US. The trade negotiations can still go on. So we don't, from our side, we are not making anything difficult for others, one. And second, FDI has also come through various other routes. They come through investment, wealth funds, sovereign wealth funds. They also come through various other destinations from where funds are managed. So I'm not saying this is not going to have a bearing. It will have a bearing, but we are trying to offset it. We are not engaging with other countries, other FDI sources. So work is on. I can assure that much.
Work is on, so says the finance minister in conversation with us at the NDTV Profit GST conclave only yesterday. And gentlemen, you heard her. And also we've heard the Prime Minister speak about this. He's spoken directly to President Trump to conclude these trade talks at the earliest. Now, that is the kind of language that is being used, at the earliest. And Trump, too, has said that a deal should pose no difficulty. Now, that's quite a shift after weeks of tariff tensions that have rattled businesses and markets. The big question is, are we moving towards resolution now, or simply entering another round of negotiations? Let's just pose this to my guest. What has been a really tough ride as far as striking this trade deal is concerned, Mr. Dasgupta. From your perspective, your experience on trade deals, what's actually on the table this time around? Is there a tariff rollback? Is Russian oil still on the table? Digital services, market access? What is actually negotiable now, according to you?
It's very difficult to predict anything about President Trump. Today he's blowing hot, tomorrow he's blowing cold. So I wouldn't hazard a guess about what is on the table and what is not. He has repeatedly mentioned that India has offered near zero duty tariffs, but he has left unsaid as to what India's demands have been of the US, because it is supposed to be a bilateral trade deal. And from some early reports which had emanated about the negotiations, I think the Indian side had definitely raised this issue that the tariffs in areas that they were interested in should be lowered below pre-Trump levels. That is the December to 2024 levels, below that level. And that would be a kind of a quid pro quo. Now, the problem with President Trump's administration at the moment is that he doesn't have a congressional authority for a fast track trade deal. So, in the absence of this, he is not in a position at all to reduce the tariffs on any item.
But are
He
you
can-
saying,
he
are you
has-
saying that a fast-track deal is something that Mr. Trump may actually want? Let me take that across to Mr. Malhotra.
I don't think anyone would know that at this moment in time. He's been blowing hot and blowing cold. But certainly his latest comment is a good development and is a welcome development from our viewpoint. There is much to be negotiated still, as I can see it. We did start the negotiations early between India and USA, but the deal is done only when it is done in all its aspects and it comes into the public purview. Till then, I think everything is open. There may be pressures and counter pressures from both sides.
Yes.
There are lobbies in both countries. And I think this process will take a little more time. I don't see it happening tomorrow morning, but yes, it's moving in the right direction finally. And we call ourselves comprehensive global strategic partners. In that context, it was very strange to see punitive sanctions being levied on India.
Yes.
There was no basis for those sanctions. And now at least one hopes that the negotiators will be allowed to sit down and work out solutions which are mutually advantageous.
But
and
those
acceptable
punitive
to both sides.
sanctions, those are going to stay, right? At this point in time, do you see a rollback to be able to create that sense of fair dialogue?
I would expect them to be rolled back when the deal is revealed. If we are continuing with 50% sanctions, 50% tariffs, it makes absolutely no sense for us to even consider anything that the Americans are offering.
Right.
So even 25% is far too high if you look at what our neighbors and other competitors in various sectors are getting between 19 to 20, 21, 22. Even 25% is too high. So if it has to be of interest to India, it should come down a little more. But 50%, not a chance. We should not accept anything which keeps these punitive sanctions in place. I think that should be part of our negotiating position.
Do we have that negotiating position?
What is part of this?
It's an important piece to ask whether we have that negotiating clout, considering what has happened in the recent past. Mr. Dasgupta, where do you think India is placed at the negotiating table right now when we see these resumption of trade talks?
Well, there are two things which have become very clear over the past month or so. One is that India is prepared to grind it out. If it is causing distress to many of the labor-intensive sectors and in general to about 55% of its exports to the US, it is prepared to face it. But it will not get bullied. It will not give up its sovereign right to exercise strategic autonomy. And three, it will not lift its red lines from agriculture and dairy products which it wants to protect. So that is there. Now, whether it gets anything in return or not, because getting slapped with even 25% or 20% tariffs is not getting anything in return. It is just succumbing to a bully. So that point will remain, I think, hanging in the air as to whether the US has anything to offer. The last point I wanted to mention is that the Supreme Court, I think, is now seized of the matter in the US,
Yes.
and it may give a ruling. So President Trump may have been, I think, been pushed by not only the critics in the US who are saying that you are losing a very good friend
Yes.
and a trustworthy ally.
Yes.
And the second point is, if the Supreme Court rules against President Trump, I think that would be a big setback to the entire tariff efforts or actions that he has taken.
So why-
And then he can't get anything from India.
Yes, so why the tonality has changed, that is, of course, a moot question to ask. And you're saying that it could be the court's decision about these tariffs and the way that the Trump administration has gone about putting them in place, now that might get overturned, and which is perhaps why we owe this entire push towards a trade deal once again. David Roche, do you agree from a global investor lens? These talks, are they really about tariffs, or is this also about some reassurance to the markets that neither side wants escalation?
Well, you know, Trump at the moment sees the markets are going up no matter what he does. So I don't really think he feels constrained by the markets at the moment, even though the markets are in a very dangerous place.
Yes.
There are a couple of factors I would bring in here. Number one is it is completely correct to say that the only constant thing we know is that Trump is unpredictable. So a little while ago, India was goodbye India, you know, taken over by the deepest, darkest China. Now India, great nation, America, great nation, about to do a deal. There is no common reality in this sort of splurging of remarks. I think I would say this. Number one, whatever Trump negotiates with India is subject to the Supreme Court ruling, which actually, if it rules against the use of tariffs under the emergency powers designated by the IEEPA, if it rules against those, 71% of all the so-called handshake agreements that Trump has done are over. They're invalid, and you go back to zero. And I doubt very much that where politics has moved since he started bullying other nations, whether you could ever negotiate those deals again. So the first thing I would say about India is that actually he can't negotiate a quick deal because we don't know tomorrow if he's going to have the authority to negotiate any deal. Number one point.
Yes.
So don't expect speed. Number 2 point, somebody has probably told him that pushing around India hasn't worked for 30 years. India has its own trajectory, its own navigation. And that pushing it around actually deprives the U.S. of a major source of geopolitical power within its global outreach. So maybe somebody's managed to explain that to him. So I think that is one of the reasons why he's coming back to try and negotiate the tariffs. Number 3, I can see absolutely no way in which this regime will not do anything but what it has done already. It will try and bully countries into signing dreadful trade deals in return for money, which it hopes will fill the coffers of the state and prevent a debt crisis in the United States. So actually, it cannot reduce tariffs. It can reduce them below the ridiculous 50%, but don't think they're going to go below Japan's. So it's very limited. And number 4,
yes,
I would say India is a proud nation which has set its red lines. And actually, this is not about economics. It's about pride. And Trump doesn't understand that. Everything is about money. He does not understand national pride. And there, he has got India completely wrong.
But David Roche, I also have to say that this unpredictability is something that the markets don't like, and that's exactly what Trump serves. Investors are quick to react to headlines. Do you sense that markets are taking this as some kind of genuine thaw, or do you think it's just a signal to stay calm, at least as of now?
Look, there are a lot of things going on in markets which markets should be worried about. For instance, we had an outright intrusion of Russian drones into NATO airspace last night, and the market is up. So, I mean, if you take everything across the board, from the Fed, the attacks by the U.S. administration on the independence of the Fed, you take what's going on in tariffs, you take what's happening on the geopolitical front, the market should be 20 or 30% lower. They're not. Why? Because they think the Fed is going to go on printing money. I'm sorry to tell you that I don't think India plays a great role in this. It plays a role in Indian markets, but not at the moment in global markets, because global markets are a bubble driven by just one thing, the amount of money which Trump thinks he can get the Fed to print. And it looks like it's going to be a lot.
So this means more trouble coming in the way of the markets and for investors. This kind of uncertainty is something that the markets may not be able to handle too well, which we've seen in the recent past as well. But talking about this entire negotiation that is likely to unfold now, Mr. Das Gupta, in terms of India's position, because it is difficult to play against the Trump administration when they have imposed the kind of tariffs they have. So whether it means giving concessions or holding strongly on those red lines, whether it's dairy or agriculture, whether it's digital trade or pharma pricing. How realistically can India and the US resolve some of those sticky issues and move? How is India positioned, according to you right now, to take these on?
Well, as far as pharmaceuticals is concerned, I think President Trump himself has realized, after having said that, all the major pharmaceutical companies have to set up a manufacturing base in the US. Otherwise, he will slap 200% tariffs from May or June to 2026 or something he had mentioned. Now, he realizes that inflation has already started rearing its head in the US. Employment figures are, not exactly very encouraging. In fact, the employment generation has gone down quite a bit. So these are telltale warning signs that the US economy is now starting to feel the pinch of the Trump actions, and that everything is not rosy in the garden. So if he is listening to anybody, any economist who has his ears to the ground, he would realize that this can't go on for very long. So I think pharma, he is not going to raise the tariffs. He's realized that that is a no-go area. In terms of mobile phones and a few other electronic items, I think he realizes that that would put a very large chunk of the US population, which are very, strong users of these, aids, they would feel bad about it, and there would be a backlash. So I think in the end, it is what India is prepared to give. If India, as President Trump has said, has offered near zero duty access, whether it will hold on to that or it will put some new ifs, that let us see what the Supreme Court rules. And the other point is, India may now start saying that, all right, what is it that you are going to give us in return? So first mention it, and we know that you don't have a trade promotion authority from Congress to lower your tariffs, but what is it that you're going to give us?
Well, already,
so that is a very legitimate question.
Yes, certainly. And we heard the finance minister also kind of holding ground, saying that there will be other trade deals to be struck. India is pursuing them. FDI can come from various other places as well in several other sectors. When you talk about the energy purchases from Russia, Mr. Malhotra, India has kind of maintained its line, something Washington has strongly objected to, and that's why the punitive kind of levies that we are seeing. But do you see this becoming a real sticking point in negotiations? Because they have been in the past. Now, what are the chances that India is going to step back this time around if the US makes it a big deal?
Well, it is unclear at the moment, but I think, as both the previous speakers have pointed out, India is a very proud country, and I don't see us succumbing to this sort of, unseemly pressure from anyone. And if you see also, have they imposed sanctions on any other countries for buying oil from Russia? And what all are they doing in other sectors? Look at the uranium imports, for example, from Russia. These are huge. And will they impose sanctions on themselves? I mean, is that the ridiculous path we'll be going down? So even if you look at oil and gas, they've only put a cap on the price till now. And when the EU suggested a lower cap, the Americans obviously didn't want to join in because they have their own oil production facilities which will get affected. I mean, they do fracking and they can extract oil at a particular level at so many dollars per barrel. And if it goes below that, they can't. So they have also their own interests. Everyone has considerations of their own. So this is more an attempt to pressurize India. And if they find a solution with Russia going ahead on Ukraine, well, you never know. All of this will then fade away. So I don't see this as something that they can press beyond a point.
So these pressure tactics have not worked as such, if you are to believe. But this is at the start of the restart of trade negotiations. At this time, we can say that. But if tariffs were to ease even slightly, David Roche, this question to you. What sort of market reaction would you expect in equities and even flows into India?
I don't think there'd be an awful lot of change because I think the market assumption really is that this level of tariffs is unsustainable and that the party which is going to have to take them down is the party that put them on in the first place. So it's got to be the US. And I think the ability of the US, the readiness of the US to think differently about these tariffs in geopolitical terms of its relationship to India rather than in mercantile terms of how much it contributes to the state coffers. I think the American, I don't believe that Trump has suddenly had an awakening and that he now understands the damage he's doing to his economy by pursuing these policies. So I would expect the market reaction to be quite mild. And the reason the market reaction will be quite mild because I think any ratcheting down of pressure between the US and India will be at the margin, quite small. And I don't think that it will change the fact that India is now going to pursue a course which will lessen its dependence in all respects on the United States and increase the role it plays in entities such as the SCO, the Global South, and its relationship to China.
Yeah. So meanwhile, those kind of discussions are still on the table as far as China, the entire thing that happened with Russia and China, with India, all of that is still in play. But of course, those could be dismissed as optics at this stage. But if you take a step back, Mr. Dasgupta, the broader vision, like the Mission 500 target of $500 billion in bilateral trade by 2030, a realistic framework, you'd say, or more of a long-term aspiration still, with immediate disputes playing out in the interim?
Well, 2030 is not that far away.
Yes.
And if there is this kind of huge uncertainty because of President Trump, I don't think people would, like to invest in this relationship or in increasing the trade flows, etc. So India has already started looking around for alternatives in a very constructive way. And as Mr. Roche has mentioned, it is not likely to get back to normal very soon because President Trump is not a person who acknowledges, if you read his Art of the Deal, he says that even if you have made a mistake, never concede it and carry on as if, it is a victory. So never concede defeat. So I don't know really what is there on his mind. But things will, I don't think this relationship on the trade front will go back to normal in the short term of, let's say, the next 3-4 months. But by spring, I think the macroeconomic pressures on the US economy in terms of the standoff with the Fed, in terms of, as Mr. Roche has pointed out,
Yes.
the inflationary impact because of huge printing of dollar
Yes.
notes, so all these things are going to have a large impact, and it will have a bearing on the November 26 midterm elections in the US, and there would be a backlash.
There's no doubt about that. So keeping that, all of what Mr. Dasgupta is saying in mind, David Roche, I want to ask you the final question. Who needs this deal more? Who needs this deal more right now? Is it India or the US? This trade deal, which has been long in the works, which has seen so many hurdles so far. We are seeing resumption, but who needs it now more than ever?
Oh, I think Trump does. I think what the ambassador said is quite right. I think Trump's economics, Trump's extremism are like stretching a piece of elastic. You can get away with it so far for 6, 7, 8 months, but it's running out and it's going to snap back. A whole lot of things are going to start going wrong, and you're approaching the midterm elections where the things that go wrong will get their expression. The primary thing will be living standards for people, workers, and it will be unemployment. They're the big things. So I think, therefore, Trump, he is a politician after all, is telling him, look, you better start accumulating some brownie points or your regime is going to be in trouble. And therefore, I think Trump needs the deal. And you know what? I don't think India is going to give it to him.
You're saying that Trump needs this. He wants to be a deal maker, not the tariff man that he has been with India.
Well, he wants to be the man who knows how to make deals and settle wars through strength. You know, it's kind of an almost like a cartoon-like character out of a rather bad version of Walt Disney. And of course, none of it is true. But what is going to happen is it's going to be proven untrue within the next year. And somebody is telling him, you better change trajectory. So he is changing the trajectory, but he is not going to get the successes and the deals from India that he's looking to actually be something in support of that newfound success of his. I don't think so.
And in the
He
meantime,
needs to deal. India can pass it by. It'll survive fine, but it's tough. But it'll survive. Trump cannot.
and the markets in the meantime, are they going to be steady or shaky in the near term, considering what could happen or may not happen?
Look, I think the markets are staffed by extremely simple people. With all due respect, if the central bank is printing money and there's nowhere for it to go except into asset prices, then the markets will either stay where they are or go up.
Right.
That doesn't mean that fundamentally they're right or that things are good. It's just what's going to happen. So
Right.
I say stability or up, but not healthy.
Well, tonight what we're hearing is there is extreme skepticism as far as Trump is concerned. His unpredictability, of course, is the bigger headline. The intent, some would say, is positive. The words seem to be warm, but the details, they remain to be negotiated, and there are so many details to be negotiated. For India, of course, that means balancing strategic red lines with pragmatic trade-offs. And for markets, it means staying alert, not panicking, staying alert. The road ahead may not be easy, but the willingness to talk at the very top is in itself a step forward, one would say. My sincere thanks to Jayant Dasgupta, David Roche, and Ajay Malhotra for joining us with their insights. And to you for watching The Big Question with us on NDTV Profit. I'm Vikram Oza. Good evening. To keep it with us.